Hello, KBOI. This is it again, Dylan Stalker, the Great Idaho Show. As you have heard in many recent weeks or in the great advertising on KBOI, I intend to talk to every sheriff of Idaho, a real snapshot of what's happening in Idaho through the eyes of the sheriff. We've recently talked to Boise County Sheriff Scott Turner and Canyon County Sheriff Kieran Donahue. You've heard it right here on KBOI. And now today, I am sitting here with Sam Hulse. He is the sheriff of Bonneville County out there in eastern Idaho. You know, eastern Idaho and western Idaho, it's like two different whole states. But Sam, welcome to the show today, my friend.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you for coming. Now, in this mission that I have, I'm trying to give each of the sheriffs an opportunity to have a similar platform, ask similar questions, and give you an idea. And in this first segment, it's really just, we got to get to know you a little bit. Tell us where your law story started, Idaho. You know, how did you get to where you're at?
Yeah, so I started my career, actually, I started a law enforcement program at Idaho State University.
Excellent.
So I completed that law enforcement. It was a vocational program. That's what we called them back then. And as I was completing that, I was asked to go to South Fremont High School. They were having some drug issues up there, and they wanted me to go in there undercover and see if I could get with the group that was selling drugs. So that was my first job. I was working for the Madison County Sheriff's Office, part of a drug task force that they were running. And as you might imagine, I looked a lot younger back then. So I was able to go back into the high school. And if anybody ever tells you that they want to go back to high school, trust me.
Don't do it.
You do not want to go back to high school. So at that point, I was 21, and I was married, and we had our first son. He was just a baby, just a little guy. And so I was in there doing that for about 6 months. That task force job was ending. There was no additional funding for it, so I ended up going to Clark County, and I got a job there with the sheriff's office. I was working with Craig King, who was the sheriff at the time. And I don't know what you know about Clark County, but it's right up there by the Montana border along I-15. Okay. More livestock than people in the county.
Good old Idaho. That's what we're here, what it's all about.
Absolutely. Beautiful county. I learned from Sheriff King how to be a deputy sheriff, how to really do the job, I guess you would say, how to treat people. And
I think what I like about that, just hearing you say that is, you know, what a great learning space. You are talking about learning in the real culture of Idaho. You know, the culture's changing in the old metropolitan areas, but that's a pretty interesting way to get going at it. Yeah.
It was, you know, it was very Western, if you will. And I enjoyed it up there. I learned a lot, and there you wore a lot of hats.
Sure.
So in addition to the law enforcement work that I did there, I was also involved with the ambulance service that ran out of there. So everybody, you know, they needed all the volunteers they could get on that ambulance. Yeah. And a lot of people think in a small town like that, oh, it's quiet, nothing ever happens. Well, you're involved in everything that does happen. Yeah. And there's usually enough happening, especially along a major interstate, that I got exposed to emergency services and dealing with a lot of fatality crashes and different things on that interstate, a lot of search and rescues in the backcountry around the Kilgore area, learning how to ride snow machines, and just all manner of things that you deal with as a deputy sheriff. And I loved it. And we stayed there for 5.5 years. I actually got out of law enforcement for just a little short stint. I went to work for Larson Farms and did human resource management for them. And that was a great ag company, but I didn't enjoy the job. Yeah. It wasn't where my heart was. So I came back to Idaho Falls, which is originally where I'm from. Yeah. I was born and grew up in Idaho Falls area. And that's where I met my wife, and that was coming back home for us. Yeah. So we went back to the Idaho Falls area. We actually moved just outside of Shelley. And I started my work with the Bonneville County Sheriff's Office, and I worked with them beginning in 1999, and I've been there ever since. Done a little bit of everything there. I've done some patrol work. I was a narcotics detective back into the other undercover world again. Did that for almost 6 years. After that, I became a sergeant, went back to the patrol division as a patrol sergeant, became a patrol lieutenant. The Sheriff Paul Wild had been appointed as sheriff, and he asked me to be his senior deputy and a patrol captain. So that's kind of how we run things over there.
Sure.
And I worked for him in that capacity for 13 years. And then I ran for sheriff in 2020, which right in the middle of COVID.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah,
what a time to just jump in, light the fire, get on in there.
Super strange campaign season that year. A lot of things that were unprecedented, like the mail-in ballots. I mean, just a bunch of weird stuff.
Certainly.
Nobody would ever experience that again, probably not for another 100 years.
Hopefully, right? Dear goodness gracious.
And so going through all of that and getting through that process and then ending up elected in taking office in January of 2021. I just ran unopposed for my second term, and I'm now in my first year of my second term. So that's really kind of, in a nutshell, that's the career. There's a lot of stories in there.
Oh, my goodness.
A lot of things that happened, a lot of things that I've had the opportunity to do. I was involved with our special weapons and tactics team for a number of years in Bonneville County. I was a sniper on that team. So I've had the opportunity to do most things that an individual can do in law enforcement. One thing I always wanted to do was be a canine handler. Never got that opportunity. But that was always something I would have liked to have done. But I had a lot of other great opportunities. So.
Well, I mean, it's not like we know each other, and I get a great sense what an opportunity you've been able to engage with culturally Idaho and Clark County in law enforcement. And then it sounds like you've been exposed to the many different facets of law enforcement and the different types of teams and, and drugs and traffic and all the different stuff. This is the Great Idaho Show. We're talking to Sam Hulse, all you KBOI listeners, of Bonneville County Sheriff. That's what we're catching up on today. Sam, what makes Bonneville County more unique for your law challenges, do you believe?
Well, Idaho's been discovered. I don't have to tell you that. Yeah. We've been discovered, and what we've had here for generations has now become recognized by a great portion of the country. So we have a lot of folks that want to come and experience what we have here in Idaho, and we want people to be able to come and experience Idaho. But what does that create? Well, that creates growth, and with growth comes a lot of challenges.
Yeah.
And so that's what I think, and it's not just unique to Bonneville County, but it is, I think, unique to Idaho in some ways. We have, a very geographically diverse state.
Yeah.
We have the largest contiguous forests in the lower 48 states, right in the center of the state. So you really have, I would say, 4 distinct areas of Idaho.
We got a couple minutes here in the end of this segment. It's all good.
Okay, gotcha. So that division of Idaho, that geographic uniqueness, the parts that make our state great and beautiful, also creates challenges. It creates challenges in communication. It creates challenges in utilization of resources. It creates a lot of things that are very unique to Idaho. And we're living that. We're living those challenges right now.
Well, your county, one of the fastest growing counties in Idaho, one of the top 4 populated counties in all of Idaho. You, as a sheriff, represents a pretty large stake of the opinions of the people of Idaho, the residents that are here. And one thing that I'm hearing quite often is the challenge of you've got your metro needs, right? I think those are pretty standard sheriff type opportunities, but it's always and often integrated with rural challenges and, getting out there into the middle of nowhere, search and rescue.
Yeah.
You've got some unique things going on.
Yeah, we have a huge search and rescue group, and we couldn't do it without them. They are volunteers.
Yeah.
And we have a 50-person volunteer search and rescue unit. And without that search and rescue unit, we could not accomplish the rescues that we do in our backcountry, which are many.
Yeah,
and growing because it's getting discovered. And especially this time of year, everything shifts to water rescues. And within less than a week, we had 6 water rescues in Bonneville County.
I mean, you got the Swan Valley, the Snake River. I grew up, so, I was a cougar. I'm sorry. Okay. It's okay. I know you were an Idaho Falls man. You were either a grizzly, a tiger, or one of the other ones, but we won't get in a scrap here today.
Well, I actually flip-flopped. I went from a grizz to a bee. So,
oh, wow.
There you go.
Well, so this is Dylan Stalker, the Great Idaho Show. You're listening to the Idaho Sheriff series. We're talking to Sheriff Sam Hulse of Bonneville County. We're out there majorly of Idaho Falls and the surrounding area. We're going to turn into this next segment where we talk about very county-specific challenges and realities. This is Idaho. This isn't flat Earth out there. We got some challenges and a lot of people moving here. So this, again, is the Great Idaho Show right here on 670 AM, 93.1 FM, the Great Idaho Show. Thank you. Welcome back, the great listeners of KBOI, the listeners that we are hoping to hear this. Although you don't often get the signal over there in eastern Idaho, you will be able to hear this at thegreatidahoshow.com or even YouTube. We're talking to Sheriff Samuel Hulse of Bonneville County, that is the home of Idaho Falls and all of its wonderful surrounding fast-growing towns, one of the fastest-growing counties in all of Idaho. This segment, we're going to talk about some very county-specific challenges and realities. Sam, with Bonneville County being one of the fastest-growing counties in Idaho, how does that really affect your law enforcement operations?
Well, it's a matter of trying to keep up, right? Yeah. And one of the unique things about counties is when the structure for the state of Idaho, and it's the case for a lot of states, but when the structure for the state of Idaho was built, it was over, 100 years ago when all of that was being done. And so they had concepts and ideas. And one of those concepts was that we want the growth to occur in cities. So the cities have unique taxing abilities that the counties do not possess. So the counties are designed to provide overbranching or overarching services. So anybody in Bonneville County who lives in the county is paying a county tax base.
Okay.
But then if they live in an incorporated city, they're paying additional monies. And then those cities have a choice. They can
they got local option tax things, don't they?
Unfortunately not. And we can go into local option tax.
Let's get into all of it.
So local option tax we used to have. It sunset. Yeah. There was a sunset on it in the state of Idaho. And it's a real problem. To give you an idea, if there has been things that have happened at the state government level that have really impacted counties and cities and our ability to provide localized services. And there needs to be some changes, because if there isn't, the counties and the cities aren't going to be able to keep up with the demand. And that's what we're seeing right now. We're realizing very quickly that the level of demand is not met by the current structures. And we have to begin to adjust into that to be able to provide the appropriate wages and benefits for our personnel, to be able to provide the appropriate equipment, to be able to accomplish our jobs. And one of the most important factors is to be able to provide high-quality training for those employees.
Right, these people have an expectation, and it's coming like the cops are the ones that are doing it wrong. It's like, we need more training.
Well, the truth is, I would put our training in Bonneville County up against anybody in the U.S. I've had the opportunity to travel to different parts of the country. I am on the National Sheriff's Association Board of Directors. As you know, Kieran from Canyon County just finished up as the president, and each state can have up to 2 individuals on that board, and I actually serve on that board with him. He's obviously in the executive board of that, and then I'm on the board of directors. And the reason I bring that up is I had the opportunity to interact with a lot of other sheriffs from around the country and see what their unique challenges are. And we have challenges as sheriffs, not just in Idaho, but across the nation. But that's that growth that we're experiencing, and the inability, the archaic tax structure is actually starting to come to a nexus. And things need to change. And this idea...
Legislatively is what we're talking about. Yes.
Legislatively, we have got to have additional ability for local option tax is a great one.
Tax is such a hard thing when you're talking to a bunch of constitutionalists out there.
It is, but at the end of the day, we have to pay for the services that are needed.
We need we need to doge it out and get rid of the other silly spending and get back to law and order.
I will tell you, I think Doge taught us that the federal government's got a lot of places to tighten their belt, right? But I would say that local government is and has always been extremely frugal with the way that they do business. Right. So you can't just look at what's going on at the federal level and say, oh, well, local government's the same. The truth is that isn't. And that goes for everything from roadway infrastructure. Come over to Eastern Idaho. Drive around on our narrow county roads that are handling 5-lane traffic, right? Right. They're
500%, just like a lot of other county roads.
Correct. And so all of that, as you start to look at that infrastructure, what that's telling us is it's warning signs, right? Yeah. We're not keeping up. We need different processes and the way that money needs to be focused in. And I'll give you a good example of local option tax. So let's take the city of Ammon. We police for the city of Ammon.
Very fast growing.
Very fast growing. They have a very low levy rate. Nobody wants to touch the levy rate. I get that.
Yep.
They have no other taxing options. And so now they end up in a position where they cannot provide services. We're doing it at what would be half the cost if they did it themselves. So we're providing in an excellent coordination with them. We're providing that, but they have to be able to keep up with the growth. Currently, they're not. And if they can't get another taxing option, then, we're just going to fall further behind. Well, the local option tax, they have a big, huge commercial sector. They draw people from all over that side of the state and even into Wyoming that come and shop there and do things in that community. But the vast majority of those folks that are coming in there are not paying property tax in the city of Ammon.
Okay.
Right? So
they're paying county level tax, but that doesn't come back through you, right?
Not even necessarily that, right? If they're coming in from, say, Wyoming, they're not paying anything in the state of Idaho. Sure. So they come to these shops. Maybe they have some problems. Maybe they get in a parking lot accident. Whatever happens there, we want their business. We want them to come. We want them to recreate in the area. We want those dollars. Well, what we argue is, look, allow a local option tax that the people can vote for. We're not saying just usher it in. We're saying give us the ability to take it to the people and see if the people would vote it into place. Right now, the only cities that can do that in the state of Idaho are resort cities. Well, give it to all cities.
Aren't we all resort cities here in Idaho at this point?
Starting to feel that way
realistically.
To me. Yeah.
Can you help me corroborate one thought of a conversation that I had with Scott Turner, Boise County, a different sheriff's challenge, and many of the same things that you're saying, but, you're policing people that don't live in county, and it was said that on a $90 ticket, the fine amount's about $30, and you guys get 3% of that. That sounds like we are the county, the people of the county that live there are paying to write those tickets. It's not, you're losing money. Every ticket you write, you're losing money for people that don't live in that county. So I'm trying to make sure that we get this unified across the states, because the sheriffs are getting peltered. The municipalities get 90% of that fine amount, not 3%. And that sounds silly to me.
That's one of the benefits of contracting with the city of Ammon. I'll split their fine revenue 50-50 with them. They'll give me 50% of it, right? Which is better than what I'll get as writing it on an unincorporated citation, right? So anywhere in the county, regardless of city or otherwise, I can write a county-based citation that then we get our little meager tiny bit.
You get like $3.
Yeah. So
you can't even pay an officer to get that.
So people who think that we write citations based on revenue, well, the revenue isn't for us. Most of it goes to the courts. So when you look at all of that structure is archaic and needs to be adjusted. And that's really one of the problems that the state of Idaho has is they need to address those fee structures in a coordinated, systemic, and thoughtful way. And quite often when we get trying to have these discussions, everybody just talks about less tax, less tax, less tax. How about thinking about how we target it, and we target it into the right groups of people? I agree. We don't want to put everything on the property tax. We need to think really seriously about how we shift away from property tax because it's extremely unpopular. Okay, well, let's do that. But you still have to have revenue sources. What are those? What do the people want? How do we bring that forward? And let's actually get a plan instead of having the plan of we're going to, at the state level, we're going to trumpet that we reduced your taxation. But we did it by balancing it on the backs of the local government, which when you call 911, odds are wherever you live, that's a local law enforcement person that's going to show up at your house. It's not a state resource. It's not a federal resource. It is a local resource. And that's the one that is closest to the people, that hopefully is listening to those constituencies and bringing that information up. And we're policing in a way that is consistent with that community. That is why we want that local focus. Well, you got to give us the resource to do our jobs, because otherwise somebody else is going to have to come in and do it, because we're running out of resource.
Well, it's like the typical scenario where we don't legislate until the catastrophe happens. Right?
Correct. And
I think it's quite clear that we can see via data, we can see through the communication of the sheriffs that I've personally spoken to at this point, that there is an obvious problem. We have new tools like AI. We can spreadsheet this out to make a sensible legislative decision, because of all the elected officials across this land, the one that is out there working 24 hours a day, whether you believe it or not, they are thinking every moment of the day of policing of the people and keeping them safe. It is your sheriff. We're talking to Sheriff Sam, Sam, don't put that Samuel out there. That might be another family member calling on you. But we're talking to Sheriff Sam Hulse of Bonneville County, Idaho Falls and surrounding areas, which is another county that has very fast growth, lots of urban area growth in surrounding areas, and we've got that recreation problem out there. Interesting. We're coming into this next segment, and in the next segment, we're going to do some reflections, maybe some more forward vision. You know, it's problems and solutions, and I'd like to think we could find some solutions, like possibly how do we tax the travel? You know, how do we get some revenue off of the people that are experiencing the bounty of Idaho? Well, when you come here to Idaho to visit, I'm pretty sure when you call 911 or something happens, you're going to need that rescue, or you're going to need some assistance, and we should all pay that share. Any closing thoughts? We got about a minute before we go into this next segment.
Yeah, we really do have a great place in Idaho, all of Idaho, but especially Eastern Idaho. It's extremely unique. We, of course, have the high desert out on the western side of our county, going up into where we border Wyoming on the eastern side. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful place. And we want people to come and recreate.
Absolutely.
We want people to come and enjoy our area. We're also, without our ag industry, right? That's the primary bread and butter of our area. So the potatoes, the grain.
And I'm pretty sure as a kid you had an opportunity to drive truck in the spuds and get out of high school. I know I did. I was a Madison potato driving truck driver as a child. I can't believe I was driving those trucks. This is Dylan Stalker, the Great Idaho Show, talking to Sheriff Sam Hulse of Bonneville County, and we're going to come into this next segment again. We're going to reflect on a little bit of budget resources, legislative stuff. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. KBOI 670 AM 93.1 FM, the Great Idaho Show. This is me, Dylan Stalker, your host. And my goodness, I forgot our sponsor. What a terrible person. Well, guess what? The sponsor is me, my business, the greatest collectible firearms business in all of Idaho. Old Arms of Idaho. They are your ambassadors to America's heritage. They have the 24-hour gun show online at oldarmsofidaho.com. If you have a curio, a relic, anything related to a collectible firearms, Western or military, or an entire estate, Old Arms of Idaho, don't forget it. Welcome back, Sam Hulse, Bonneville County Sheriff. This segment, we are going to talk about budget, resources, and the good old legislative reality that we're all faced here in Idaho. We kind of touched base on that this last segment. But again, I think in speaking to the sheriffs that I've spoken to so far, it's a glaring opportunity that needs to come up in the legislative docket. Can you kind of walk us through your current budget landscape, like what's underfunded, what's overstretched?
Well, I think everything at the county level right now is overstretched, to be quite honest with you, in Bonneville County. There really isn't an area of our budget that isn't overstretched. But when you talk specifically about the sheriff's office, we were asking for multiple positions, and in conjunction with our commissioners, and I have great commissioners. We have a relationship. We can work through our problems. We can have direct discussions. But they were telling me that the revenues were much flatter than expected. coming into the county this year.
Okay.
There's no question that there's an economic flattening, and that's right behind two really exponential years of inflation that just ate up everything, right?
Oh, so, cost of doing business just skyrocketed.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
We're up over 24% in operation purchase costs, vehicles,
oh my gosh,
everything else. Yeah.
Huge impact.
And so we're coming out of those impacts, and we're trying to live with, what are demanded contractual increases that we have to do. And then we're trying to grow. Well, what happened this year currently is there is no personnel adds to my organization. I cannot add any additional deputies. So that means I'm going to stay flat personnel-wise. Well, those demands don't go away. So that growth's increasing, the call volume's increasing.
Population.
We're consistently almost 50,000 calls for service per year for our office. And so that means spreading those calls for service out over a thinner group of people and not being able to add personnel. So that's where we're standing. And then in discussion with the commissioners, they said, hey, we got to come up with $300,000 more to be able to make this fit. And so then we had to go into our operations budgets and carve out those areas that we think we can live with reduced money in. And so it was able to work out. We were able to decide where we were going to shift that money.
Yeah.
And so we're okay, and we can survive some lean years. But you can't continue with this pathway when you still have all this growth coming in. The other thing that happened was House Bill 389 was passed, which actually limits our ability to tax new construction.
Okay.
So we lost money in that, right? So
I got to inject something there, okay?
Sure.
I try to play the resident too, okay?
Yeah.
I'm a resident of Boise County. I'm building my life up there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as a county resident, I just I built a barn, and then it seems like the assessor is just coming after it's like you work your whole life to get to some level of success, and then the second that you claim your own success, whatever the definition of that, man, there's just another tax coming around the corner. This is a hard conversation.
Yeah,
right?
It is a hard conversation, and I understand that taxation is a burden. It's a burden on everyone. And we want to not have high tax rates. But when the legislature makes a decision to reduce the taxing ability of a local authority and doesn't replace it with anything, what I want the citizens to realize is that means it's not going to happen. What's going to occur is you're going to lose service at the local level.
Yeah.
And it's not the state coming to your house when the problem occurs. Whether it's fire service or law enforcement or EMS, if those resources are not funded in your jurisdiction, then they're not available to respond. And if you live in the back 40 and you don't care, right? You're in the middle of nowhere and that's how you want it. That's great.
Yeah.
But you cannot build metropolises like we're building and expect the counties to carry that without some additional taxing ability. I'm not saying how that tax should be assessed. I love the idea of the local option tax because it's taxing people that are recreating and doing those kinds of things. It's a local option
tax
sales
through the
tax.
hotels. You can tax through the Airbnbs.
I think those are great ideas, but the problem is we never get off this X. We've been talking about these same things for the last 8 years that I'm aware of, and we don't move it. But what does happen is things like Bill 389, where they say, oh, guess what, county? You can now not tax that new construction. Well, if somebody's building new construction might say, great, and they can still tax it, but it's limited. It's 8% now.
Let's grow until we can smell each other's dinner.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And the issue is that gets you into planning and zoning and your local plans and all of those things that have to be dealt with, putting the cost of a lot of those infrastructure ads on the developers so that they can pass that on to the people that are buying the properties. We haven't always been good at that. We've gotten much better in Bonneville County at doing that. So, for example, if you have a developer coming in, part of that development is to make sure that the roadways are improved around that development rather than trying to pay that off with other tax monies later. Yeah. So there's layers to this, and it's not easy, and there is counterpoints, just as you brought up. People are going to say, well, I don't want an additional tax there. But you can't say, I don't want to pay for that, and then say, I need a cop at my house in 3 minutes. Because those things don't fit in the same shoe, right? And so as long as you're okay with the reduction of services, you're okay that it's going to take us an hour to get to you. And in some places in Idaho, that's a good response.
Yeah.
To get somebody there in an hour. But most people that are living like that know they're living like that. They know and they want it that way, but the people that live in the more city environments, they expect and are used to additional services. And there's your kicker. How do we provide those additional services in that framework? And I think contracting with a sheriff is a great way, because again, any of our contract cities are at half or less of what it would cost them to do it themselves.
Well, in that contracting sense, you also mentioned that if you're going to be policing under that contract, you at least get to recuperate a negotiated percentage of the citation, because it just utterly boggles my mind, like that as a sheriff, you all are writing tickets and you can't even get enough money to pay for the officer that was there to write the ticket in the first place.
Oh yeah, no, they're not lucrative, and they haven't been for my entire career. But I'm okay with that. We're not writing the citations to make money.
Sure. And I don't believe in that whole concept of go get your quota so we can make money, but it shouldn't cost the department money, because it absolutely sounds like it is. How about the legislative potential disconnect? Is there one? Do the Idaho legislators really understand what is happening here?
For me, it was as bad as I've ever seen it this last year. The absolute disconnect and the dismissal of us as sheriffs.
Sure.
When we gave our message, it was completely ignored.
Like ghosted.
Yeah, well, it was they'll listen to us, but then they just go ahead and do whatever they're going to do, and our opinions are what they are, and sometimes you're going to have sheriffs disagree, right?
Yeah.
But when 30 or 40% of the group is against, but the majority is for, and quite often we'll have 60 or 70% of the sheriffs all agree on a particular issue, and we'll speak about that to the legislature, and they'll do the exact opposite, or they will ignore what our input was. That gives me pause, because then I'm like, well, that just means that you don't believe we know what we're talking about. And so I guess we'll plod that road until we hit whatever wall's next. It's within their ability to do what they're going to do. A perfect example of that is the removal of the front license plate bracket off of the cars. We told them that's a bad idea. We like the front plate because it helps us resolve crime. What do? They make a law about the removal of the front plate. And they did that, and they tied it to license plate reader stuff that the law enforcement did not want to be hampered. And so in the process, they buy the silence of the chiefs of police. They buy the silence of the Fraternal Order of Police, the FOP, those large groups, so that they can make it appear as though we're divided. But the sheriffs were clear. Don't take away the front license plate.
That's pretty common sense if you ask me. I'm sorry. I'm just a regular old human here. Yes, I personally, this is important to me because I believe in law and order. I believe if we're going to have the laws, we should follow them. And if we're going to be able to police these laws, we should have the resources that it comes from. I'm Old West belief. I trust my sheriff. They're elected. If there was any dirt on a sheriff, trust me, they're going to have a hard time getting in there. And I truly believe the core of Idaho's sheriffs, I haven't met all of them, I want to believe it, has a motivation to just simply provide safety and security, the number one reason that we have sheriffs.
Well, yeah, I'm not going to tell you that we're always 100% right on every issue.
Right,
there's always nuances, right? And sometimes we need to be more educated about a certain issue. We can talk a lot about incarceration. A big part of what we do as sheriffs are we run the jails, right? The commissioners provide the resource. We make sure that jail's ran. Bonneville County has the second largest jail in Idaho now. And so there's a lot to that. It's a 623-bed jail facility.
Risk everywhere.
That's a big deal. But it is also one of the greatest opportunities of my life to watch some of the things we've been able to do in that jail, to actually reach people that have active drug addiction, that don't believe in themselves. We just graduated our 52nd GED graduate out of our jail. We have the positive approach we have the only GED testing facility in any jail in Idaho. I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of my team that brought that into existence.
Yeah.
And we're making a difference, because what most people don't realize is a lot of people in the county jail have not been to court yet. They're in detention. They're still innocent until proven guilty.
Absolutely. So why be held back for their futures?
So we want to progress those folks along. The other thing is even the ones that we're holding for the Idaho Department of Corrections or others, right? We want to hand them back to the community better than they came in. And most of the people in the jail facility today are going to be back in the community within 90 days. Over 90% of them will be. So you want them coming back to the community better than they came in, right? So it's about providing opportunities and resources. Now, I realize we have people that are institutionalized. We have true criminals that are not going to take opportunity that we provide to them.
Yeah.
And we have people that are always going to try to manipulate the system. But we've been able to do some cool programs in conjunction with the national sheriffs, and we can talk a little bit more about that later. But the reason I bring that up is there are huge opportunities for success, even at the legislative level. If we can get in the room and talk about the issues honestly and get the politics out of it a little bit, and let's talk about what are the solutions. What are the true solutions standing in front of us, not the rhetoric.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of rhetoric running around.
Political rhetoric.
But let's talk about what are the solutions and the true solutions. But sometimes it's about optics and how somebody wants to appear to a political class rather than the solution.
Yeah, politics in the application of what that is all about. There's so much muddy water in between it all. And I'm thankful for your experience at the national level participating, because you do get to hear from many other sheriffs. You and Kieran Donahue. This is Dylan Stalker, the Great Idaho Show. We're talking to Sheriff Sam Hulse of Bonneville County. We hope that all the Bonneville County residents get to hear this. You're going to be able to listen to this 24 hours a day at thegreatidahoshow.com and on YouTube. And this is us or me just trying to get in touch with every sheriff in Idaho. We're going to come into this next segment and talk a little bit about forward vision. Okay, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, KBOI, and all the people that listen to the Great Idaho Show through the greatidahoshow.com and YouTube. You'll find us there, The Great Idaho Show. Today, we're continuing on our sheriff series where my goal is to talk to every single sheriff in Idaho, all 44 of them, and just give them an opportunity to talk about the day in the life of a sheriff and what it's like in Idaho to be that sheriff, a historical record. Today, we're talking to Sam Hulse, Bonneville County Sheriff. And before we finish up this last segment, don't forget, Old Arms of Idaho. They are, again, your firearms Western and military specialists. We're talking collectibles, estates, the fine stuff, the good blued wood and metal, your swords, knives, bayonets, or anything under the gun sun. If you think about a 24-hour gun show, which is at oldarmsofidaho.com. Old Arms of Idaho is your ambassadors to America's heritage. Sam, welcome back to this final segment. Thank you very much for taking your time out of the day. Y'all don't know this, but in this day that we're recording this, Sam is out meeting with our governor and some other things that are happening because Sam participates in a sheriff network at a national level with a lot of things going on. And I feel that Idaho is blessed to have two sheriffs participate in that. Sam, this is kind of a segment about your reflections and maybe forward vision. When you're done as being a sheriff, what do you hope people will say that you stood for?
That I stood for others, that those that couldn't protect themselves, that those that were the victim of crime, that we stood in the breach between evil and good, right? That we hold that line. We talk about that all the time. A lot of people understand and some don't, that thin blue line we talk about is the line between chaos and order, and we stand in that breach. And that's what I want to be known for, is that I was there and that I helped pay it forward, and hopefully I left it better than I found it. I think that's the goal that all of us step into. I've had the opportunity to learn from great leaders.
Yeah.
And because of that, I think I had a rung up on the ladder, right? So that I could maybe take things a little bit higher step. But it's always about our teams, right? Whatever I do is really secondary to how I empower the team around me. it's a big sheriff's office. I can't do everything. While I'm over here doing this, I have dedicated people that are making sure that those calls for service are answered, making sure that the inmates in the jail are protected, and that they're treated fairly and constitutionally, which is the most important thing.
Thank goodness for that. Thank you for saying that. Like, we all need to read the dang thing and understand it, because this is America, ladies and gentlemen, and we're in the greatest state in America, if you ask me.
We are, and you know, I always get frustrated because there are very few people that understand we're a constitutional republic.
Sure.
We have that democracy word that's running around everywhere, and yeah, sure, we're a form of democracy, but good luck finding that in any of the documents, right?
Yeah.
Because we are a constitutional republic, and people are like, well, that doesn't matter. It does, and I think you know that. But yeah, that's what I want to be known for, was that we did our job in a way that honored those things, and that we helped the people in our community, and that I was a conduit to make sure that happened.
Well, I'll tell you something that I am really feeling about these conversations and really discovering is that the sheriff, one particular policing authority, you have city police, you have state police, you have the sheriff. So far, the sheriff has come from the community. The sheriff grew up usually in that town. The sheriff got started in some initial policing form and spent their time in your community in Idaho and was a part of that culture. You know, you have these big city police departments that are hiring out chiefs of police from other towns that have no idea what the culture of Idaho really is, and maybe they knew how to do it in many a no place, or no place like this one. That's for gosh darn sure. So I just really appreciate that you are able to share, and what I've discovered on the sheriffs I've spoken to this point, that these are folks that are policing from being here.
Absolutely. And the office of the sheriff is a constitutional office. It's very old, came over with us from England, as you know, and it matters. And where the sheriffs have retained the majority of the bulk of their authorities, it's super critical to the community that they have that. And we are the only law enforcement official who answers directly to the people of that community. If they don't like what we're doing, they get a new sheriff.
Absolutely.
And that's the way it should be, right? And so I'm thankful for the office of the sheriff and my ability to have the opportunity to serve as that figurehead after spending my career working for sheriffs and knowing what that means. And it's branded on my heart now.
Man, I love that, because I'm a reflective of the Old West, good people versus bad people, and usually one person, and they're willing to put their face in the line of danger to go and just sort out something so simple. It's all so simple, but you get politics in the way, you get money in the way, taxation in the way, concepts of the Constitution in the way, which should never have anything in the way of it, if you ask my humble opinion. What would you say to a young person of Bonneville County thinking about going into law enforcement?
If you have the calling, come do it.
You already know it, right?
Yeah. If you have the calling and you're called to the work, then you need to step forward into it, because otherwise you're going to sit and lament and wish and wonder. Yeah, because I've had a few people that have come to us later in their life because they were so called to the work they finally had to come. So they're 35 and they're showing up to be a deputy sheriff. Well, good for them. But I would just say that if you're called to the work, get engaged, because there's a reason that you're called to it. I believe very much in the importance of the individual and in the individual rights that we profess as a nation, that they're God-given. And so when you're called, it's your responsibility to step forward into that calling. And that's what it's about. The truth is, you're not going to get rich. We can't pay you enough to take the risks you're going to take for your community.
Absolutely.
So it really, truly is a calling. And so you have to decide whether or not it's for you.
Well, I have to say, this is going to sound a little bit cheesy, but for whatever reason, I do this radio program for Idaho, and I really just try to talk to the people that I think are doing something good or some initiative, some effort. But then it came to me, I'm like, oh my goodness, what do I do in this next season? I need the sheriffs of Idaho all together. This is something that goes way back in history, the concept of the sheriff. And Idaho and a lot of states are at risk in this converted thought of how to govern moving forward. And y'all are moving here for a reason. Don't forget it. It's because we've captured something and we're holding on to it. And I hope you understand that. Is there one message you want Bonneville County residents and the rest of Idaho to hear from their sheriff right now?
You know what? We live in a great state. We need to find ways to talk to our neighbors. We need to find a way to express our views in a respectful way. And it's okay if we don't agree, but we have to find a pathway forward. And we have to look for solutions. Our state is growing. There's a lot of folks coming in, and that's not going to stop. I've heard people say, well, I just want it how it was. Well, that doesn't happen.
Sure.
The past is the past, and we have to look forward into the future and figure out what's next. So let's do that as cooperating with one another. You know, there's a lot of stuff about immigration. We could do a whole segment.
Just my goodness.
But we need to come to a point in this country where we can talk again. There's too much polarization. There's too much, I'm going to do it my way and I'm not going to listen to anybody else who has disparaging or different views than I do. And the truth is we have to be able to have hard conversations. And when we shut down folks with diverse opinions, then we're not as good as we could be. We should be able to have hard discussions that are challenging and still come out friends, still be able to shake hands and still be neighborly. And that's so important. And I think that that's what we don't want to lose as Idaho. As we grow, as the communities become more and more densely populated, it's just important that we find ways to move forward, coordinated as citizens of a state. And that's so important for us. So that's what I would call everybody forward to. And then the other thing I would like people to realize is you live in one of the best parts of the country here in Idaho.
Well, man, you've reflected something that other conversations that I've had, it's about communication, not confrontation. When you have that conversation that you need to have with your neighbor, just convert your mind to not avoiding the confrontation. It's just communication. And what is your goal? And your goal is to have a positive outcome. And if your goal is to have a positive outcome, maybe you don't come guns a-blazing trying to tear them down for whatever happened. Be like, hey, I'm just trying to talk to you. Let's have a neighborly conversation. Maybe we can have a neighborly conversation between the sheriffs in Idaho and the legislature because there's a problem coming. We've got this finishing up. This is Dylan Stalker, the Great Idaho Show. We have just spoken to Sam Hulse, the Bonneville County Sheriff. You're listening to this either on KBOI 670 AM, 93.1 FM, or anytime at thegreatidahoshow.com. And don't forget our sponsor, Old Arms of Idaho, ambassadors to America's heritage.